Alright, so today's video is probably going to be a little bit on the longer end, and I do kind of want to preface this video with my understanding that a lot of these guys that I'm going to talk about, A, might not be on their respective team's roster at the end of the preseason, and B, a lot of you probably don't care about preseason football. But at this point, preseason football is really all we have, and I do think there is some merit to be given to some of these guys. You know, they're trying to get roster spots. They're trying to prove why they deserve to be on their respective teams. And these week one performances go a long way in some of these guys' cases. They're first round picks that are trying to prove that they deserve spots at the top of the depth chart. Some of these guys are trying to prove they deserve to be on the roster. Some of these guys are starters who are, they know they're coming in as week one starters and they just want to get off on a good start. I will also mention some of these teams really did not have a good week one of the preseason. So some of these teams are going to be a little bit quicker to go through than others. I'm going to start with the NFC South, go through team by team, each division. NFC South, we have the Atlanta Falcons to start it off. Easton Stick came in and probably proved a little bit that he has a shot at being the number 2 quarterback for the Falcons. I know that Kirk Cousins is there, but with Easton Stick's performance as the week 1 preseason starter, it's a pretty good performance to put up. Ted McMillan for the Carolina Panthers, not really an incredible showing, but he made some pretty good plays. His first catch went for, I believe, over 20 yards. It was a nice over-the-shoulder catch with a contest. Mason Tipton for the Saints, the one reception for over 50 yards and the touchdown that came off the arm of Tyler Shuck. It was like an incredible double move that Mason Tipton put on his defender, and he got open about 5-10 yards down the field from the cornerback. It was a good catch by him. He looked it in all the way, all that good stuff you're looking for from a receiver. For Tampa Bay, Ryan Miller. He's coming in trying to get, a 4th, 5th spot on the depth chart at receiver. And 6 catches for 66 yards. He is 6'7", I believe. He's just an absolute monster. And he came in, gave a pretty good performance, albeit against backup players. But again, this is a guy trying to earn his roster spot, trying to make it known that he deserves to be in the league, and he's off to a pretty good start. The Chicago Bears, Austin Booker, for I think the second straight preseason, has a 3-sack game. I know going back to last year, there was a game he had at least multiple sacks in one game. He might have had multiple sacks in multiple games, but three sacks in one preseason game, that's something that is somewhat impressive given that he wasn't playing the entire game. Kyle Allen for Detroit, coming off of a pretty terrible performance for his standards. I know, again, a backup quarterback, but he's a guy who's been a veteran in the league. Coming off that Hall of Fame game, he was probably not a fan of how he played. And I don't think the Lions were a fan of how he played. And to be honest, this came at a really good time for Kyle Allen because he's trying to win that number 2 QB spot. He's trying to hold off Hendon Hooker. And Hendon Hooker had a terrible game. He lost, I think, a couple fumbles. It just was a bad performance for Hooker. Great performance for Kyle Allen. Green Bay, Amar Johnson, 7 carries for 67 yards and a touchdown. Another guy trying to get a second, third role in that running back room for Green Bay behind Josh Jacobs, behind possibly Marshawn Lloyd if he's healthy. For Minnesota, Khalif Halasi, I hope I'm saying his name correctly. I didn't look up the pronunciation before I started this. But 2 interceptions, 3 pass deflections. 2 of those interceptions, both of those interceptions came off of... both of those interceptions came off the arm of Graham Mertz, a draft pick for the Houston Texans this year. So, I mean, again, it's one of those things, and it's just going to get brought up time and time again, so I'll just bring it up now. Again, it came off probably the 3rd, 4th string quarterback for the Texans. Again, anytime you can make plays and prove you can make plays at any point in an NFL season, Khalif Halasi is hopefully, in his case, on his way to earning a spot. Over to the NFC West, we have Jacoby Brissett, a guy who's probably firmly in the backup quarterback spot for Arizona. 5 for 8, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns in their game. Again, he's a guy firmly in his spot as the backup quarterback, wants to maybe prove to other teams around the league that might need a starting quarterback that he's a guy that you can come and get, and he will be competent in that role. Especially after last year with New England, I think Jacoby Brissett is looking for anything to put on tape that still proves he could be a starter in the league. For the LA Rams, Nate Valcarcel, 10 total tackles and a pass deflection. For the San Francisco 49ers, Marquise Siegel, he was a draft pick this year for San Francisco, I believe, 5th or 6th round. 7 tackles, 5 of them solo tackles. Coming into this year, the Niners are going to be down Malik Mustafa for a portion, if not a majority, of the 2025 season. So if Marquise Siegel is able to come in, provide some great production, is able to make solid tackles, is able to make plays in the passing game, that's only going to be a positive, especially once Malik Mustafa comes back. Seattle Seahawks, George Holani, probably one of the guys who had one of the better performances in preseason so far. 7 carries, 61 yards for a touchdown, and he had a 1 reception for 20 yards as well. Another guy. I mean, we saw Kenny McIntosh already went down with a season-ending injury. That kind of leaves it to Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet in the backfield. And if George Holani can just be the guy, third down possibly every once in a while, or even just a guy to be a spell back, that's a great position for him to be in, especially because last year he wasn't really called upon. He was on the practice squad. He was elevated a few games, I believe, but never really got much of a chance to do anything in a regular season game. Down over to the NFC East, Malik Davis for the Dallas Cowboys started preseason with 7 carries for 63 yards. This is a Dallas Cowboys team that's looking for any and every single guy that can produce at the running back spot for them. If he can make production in the passing game, if he can be productive in the running game, literally whatever that can happen. I mean, Dallas is going to be relying on Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders this year in the running back room. 2 guys who I think many people already believe are past their prime, are past their chance to make much production for the Cowboys. For the New York Giants, Dante Miller, 10 carries, 22 yards, but really where he made his bones were in the passing game. 7 receptions for 80 yards. Another guy coming into a situation, he's trying to hold off guys like Cam Scatabo or Devin Singletary or even Tyron Tracy. I mean, this is a running back room in New York that there's a lot of faces that don't really know where their spot is going to be, and it's kind of going to be preseason and training camp to see who ends up winning the first, second, or third spot in that running back room. For Philadelphia, another guy who probably had one of the best preseason games so far, Tanner McKee, 20 for 25, 252 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a touchdown on the ground. The Eagles traded away Kenny Pickett. They traded away, really the main guy who came in as the backup quarterback in 2025. And Tanner McKee, it's basically going to be between him and Dorian Thompson-Robinson for that backup quarterback spot behind Jalen Hurts. But DTR didn't have a great game. Tanner McKee came in and lit up the scoreboard. So I think he's pretty much fully entrenched himself in that number 2 quarterback territory. Carlin Vickers for the Washington Commanders. The Commanders kind of got stomped in their first preseason game, so it was kind of slim pickings for Washington. But Vickers had a solid game, 8 tackles to his total. Going now to the AFC, we start in the AFC North, and the game that everybody was talking about after preseason week 1 was Shedeur Sanders. His 14 for 23 performance, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, provided some juice on the ground as well with almost 20 rushing yards. I'm not going to go anywhere near as far as some people are saying that he had the greatest preseason game of all time. I think that's kind of a stupid remark to even attribute to anyone's performance, and if I'm going to attribute it to anyone's performance, it's going to be Tanner McKee that I just had on the screen a few seconds ago. Shedeur Sanders played solid though, but he did almost play through 3 full quarters, and he didn't have a great perfect game, but he's also a 5th round rookie. So what his performance was, given the fact that Joe Flacco is probably the starting quarterback right now. Kenny Pickett is hurt. Dylan Gabriel is hurt. This team is turning to guys like Snoop Huntley to just be a body in training camp. Tanner Hudson for the Cincinnati Bengals caught both of Joe Burrow's 2 touchdown passes. He added 4 more receptions for 62 yards in total. Keaton Mitchell for the Baltimore Ravens, 9 carries, 68 yards on the ground with a touchdown. He had a long run in there. This is a guy who, is pretty talented. And through the last few years, every single time it's felt like Keaton Mitchell is starting to become a main option for Baltimore, he gets hurt or somebody else steps up like a Justice Hill. And it's hard when you have Derrick Henry in front of you getting the ball 300 plus times a year. And to have this type of production, it proves that he's a guy that's kind of I wouldn't say above the preseason, but he's at the same talent level of these guys playing in the preseason, if not better. And he had a great showing. He had an incredible showing. Skylar Thompson for the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming from the Miami Dolphins, 20 for 28, 233 yards and 3 touchdowns. An incredible performance for a guy trying to just be on the team. The Steelers obviously have Aaron Rodgers, they have Will Howard, and they have Mason Rudolph. So Skylar Thompson was kind of on the outside looking in at a possible depth chart slot, and this game goes a long way in him trying to actually get on the team. Over to the AFC South, the Houston Texans, we saw Davis Mills in his one drive go 4 for 5, 50 yards passing and a touchdown. A guy, again, who's probably pretty entrenched in that number 2 backup quarterback role. I think what I would love to highlight most is the fact that he did it all in one drive. And the one drive that they had, they looked efficient. They looked like a good team passing and running the ball. So that's something you'd love to see if you're a Texans fan. Indianapolis Colts, JT Tuimoloau, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 pass deflection, and 2 QB hits. When you're looking for production from a first-round pick, especially on the defensive line, sometimes it's hard to see statistically, but JT brought a pretty good performance to the table in his first action in the NFL. Cam Little for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the one of 2 special teams guys that I'm going to highlight here. I'm just going to say it's the record. A 70-yard field goal. I think it was something everybody, if you were watching that game, everybody was hoping he made the kick. And it was crazy to see a guy kick the ball from his own 40-yard line and make the kick. It was probably the craziest moment of week 1 in the preseason. He also went 3 for 3 on his other kicks. For the Tennessee Titans, another team that was kind of slim pickings to try to find a great performance. Cam Ward didn't really surprise anybody or impress, but James Williams Sr., 7 total tackles, 4 of them solo tackles. Moving now to the AFC West, Las Vegas Raiders' Shedrick Jackson had 4 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. Eric Rodgers for the LA Chargers had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 off of Tyler Shuck. He put in 4 solo tackles as well. For the Kansas City Chiefs, Matt Araiza, another special teams guy, punter. He had 2 kicks within the 20-yard line, 2 of them actually I believe, within the 10-yard line of the Cardinals. I think 1 checked up at like the 8 and 1 checked up at like the 6. He had a 68-yard punt in there. He just somehow the Kansas City Chiefs are finding guys to be weapons at every single position. And this year, apparently, punting is not an exception. Going down to the AFC East, Ollie Gordon for the Miami Dolphins had 8 carries, 33 yards, and a touchdown. He also provided 40 yards nearly off of 1 catch. For the New England Patriots, Trevion Henderson took his very first touch of his NFL career, a kickoff return for a touchdown, about 100 yards, I believe. He had another carry for 18 yards, 3 catches for 12 yards. For the New York Jets, free agent signing Jay Tufele had 3 tackles, a sack and a half, and a fumble recovery touchdown. And for the Buffalo Bills, a name that I think everyone's familiar with, Frank Gore Jr., 5 carries for 21 yards, 5 catches for 50 yards, and he had a tackle as well. So this is just another guy trying to prove he belongs on this team to just do whatever job is needed out of him. So that's going to be it. I think I got through this pretty quickly. And if there is anyone I missed, I'm sure there is. Or, if there's someone else that should be highlighted, make sure you leave it in the comments below. I guarantee I did not get everybody. But, yeah, let me know. Make sure you subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next video.